Welcome, my friends. Welcome to an obscure 15-minute free thinking podcast episode from inside my car. I've been sitting here for about 45 minutes contemplating life, everything from societal change to societal collapse to neurochemistry to atheism to religion to Marxism and everything in between. And I guess that's nothing new or surprising to anybody who watches my channel. I mean, I'm always interested in something and I'm always looking into something, but I don't always share the things that I really want to share. And the reason for not sharing the things that I want to share, well, they're multifaceted and several-fold, I should say. Number one, there's certain topics I can't discuss on YouTube because I will get my channel. I'm not worried about demonetized. I hear this from YouTubers. They're like, I would love to talk about this, but I'll get demonetized. Look, anytime you hear a YouTuber say that, or anybody online saying I'll get demonetized, they're a coward, okay? It's not about whether you can get ad sponsorships. If it's an important topic that you really feel is something you have to cover, and you're willing to say, well, I can't talk about this because I won't get paid, you're part of the problem. That's the way I see it. Because you could start a Patreon like I have and have just a few people, but the 25 or 30 or so people that I have on my Patreon show me that some people care and want to hear what I have to say. And that puts a little bit of pressure on me to make sure I know what the fuck I'm talking about, right? I mean, common sense tells you that a guy rambling on the internet is it's nothing to cheer about. I mean, there's plenty of people ranting on the internet and talking about life and talking about death and everything in between. And I would like to think that my viewpoint matters. And the more I hate to break the moment here, but that's like the fifth Rivian I've seen drive by in the last 15 minutes. I'm in a very fancy neighborhood up at the park, and it's one of them new Volkswagens drove in. It's in Tualatin, which is near Beaverton, which is near Portland. For those who, Portland, which is in Oregon, which is in America, the United States of America. It's kind of a nicer area, but anyway, I guess that's a perfect segue into wealth and how ignorant it makes people to the suffering of those around them. And lately I've been listening to a lot of, well, you know how it goes in phases. I started out with Propaganda, a book by Edward Bernays. And it was written in 1928, so it's almost 100 years old, and he is considered the father of propaganda. And the book is called Propaganda, and he founded basically the term and the whole, nuanced approach, or maybe not so nuanced approach, to convincing people that more doctors smoke Camel cigarettes and that women should smoke. Back then it was called the Torches of Freedom. I guess you would call it what's the term I'm looking for? Anyway, whenever they do kind of some kind of a theme around a product, something we consume. Today it might be goji berries or a mushroom extract. Back then, maybe it was laudanum, selling heroin to parents to give to their kids, these kinds of things. And mind you, this was after the Civil War, when many soldiers came back from the war with addictions to morphine and opium, and many it was well known in society. It wasn't like the epidemic just happened. We knew that this could be a problem, but profit over people. Actually, after that was nailed down and we had tighter regulations on opiates, gradually the public mind, as a new generation, grew. They weren't aware of the travesty of the past, and so we started selling OxyContin. I know that one's been brought up and so many times, but this is something that I didn't learn about through documentaries or YouTube. This is something that I've been interested in for like 15 years. Like the whole OxyContin marketing ploy. I had friends who were into opiates. I'm well aware of the effects of even a 10 milligram oxy. They can be extremely strong. Well, they were making not just 10s, 5s, 10s, 20s, 50s, right? Or sorry, 40s, 80s, and 160 milligram fucking OxyContin. This is insane. This is like 16 times more than I would take and get nauseous and puke. So I did eventually at one time in my life, I experienced many different substances, drugs, but legal drugs that were more potent than the street drugs that I would see around. And so not to get too far off track, the pure fact here is that capitalism ruled the day, and the media was complicit because journalists were not doing their homework. Now, I want to say I'm not anti-journalism. In fact, it's the only thing that can save our society, and it's the only thing that can maybe bring about a democracy, which brings me into a whole different conversation about how we don't actually have a democracy, and that we have an oligarchy, but also kind of a, when I hear people talking about the patriarchy, it's as ridiculous as people talking about whether a conservative or a Democrat is going to rule this country better. These people all bow to the same God, and that God is power, influence. Interestingly enough, for all the, let's say, claims that are made against conservative presidents as being, bloodthirsty, bloodlust, because they're going to war and they're starting these wars, Joe Biden made it very clear that he didn't really give a shit about brown people and civilians in these countries, that whatever it costs to make America first, to make America strong, that's what we needed to do. The thing is, it was hidden in the past. Now it's just out in the open. And I'm making this point because this is really the central theme of this discussion. It's about power and the power structure. When I mentioned Marxism earlier, that wasn't just a whim. Karl Marx was born a kind of middle upper class, guy with a good education. So he was the kind of guy who was aware of the power structure. A lot of people who aren't wealthy, who don't have the time to do the research and the homework and see how the world really works, they just rely on a system that says if you work hard, you pay your bills, you're going to get taxed a little bit, but that's going to build your roads, it's going to help protect the country. You come home, watch Netflix, go to football games, you get the point. And I'm not saying all Americans are that ignorant that they don't care or pay attention, but there's a lot of really stupid fucking people out there. And, don't put it past people to be completely, not just ignorant, but willfully ignorant. There's a huge difference here, because I don't fault people for being unaware of things that are going on or unaware of how the system really operates. But I do fault people who are unwilling. Well, let's just say, actually, I don't fault people who don't know what's going on, and I don't fault people who don't want to hear about what's going on. Ignorance can be bliss. What I do fault is people who don't want to know what's going on, refuse to listen to anybody else give an opinion on or idea about what's happening really in the world, but also choose to make opinions and strong associations with groups that they don't even understand, and resisting things that they don't get, supporting things they don't get, and what comes down to being basically an American that votes against your own interests. And it's pretty cliche, but it's so true. And this isn't... Often I hear this thrown at conservatives in my country, that you all vote against your own interests, and that, you're voting against things that benefit red states, things that actually help with, which is true. For those, who want to actually, understand how these things work, the blue states, why are they all coastal states? The blue states are the Democratic states because they have the largest cities generally. Most large cities tend to be more Democratic. Why? Because they have a higher education level. That offends people to even say that, because it assumes that people who are lower educated or don't have colleges all over, in their cities, and tall buildings, somehow are not as intelligent, and that is not the case. That is not the case at all. They are people who live often in rural areas are much more intelligent than the people I meet in the cities. And I'm not talking about book smarts. I'm not talking about, scientific discoveries or breakthroughs or tech bros. I'm talking about the ability to live a life of meaning, purpose, with family, and having good values and characteristics that most humans want. And I'm just going to be straightforward. With most humans I've met, if you really get to know them, they'll say, if you're like, what is life all about? Like, all I wanted to do was I just want to have a little place to call my own. I'd love to have a family or raise a family. That's not for everybody. For some people, it's just they want to start a project or, build a business, but they want to do something meaningful in their lives. And the reason a lot of people don't is because they feel like they're trapped in a job, so they can't go off and do their dream or really do something meaningful, something amazing for society. And the people who don't have kids often say, I just can't afford it. I mean, I hear this consistently. And then they say, also, the other one is, why would I want to bring in a kid to this world? And look, I was just like that. I was one of you. I get it. I understand. I met my wife in 98. She had a 3-year-old son. We were okay. With one boy, he was a teenager, in the early 2000s. And my wife got pregnant. And we had a son in 2009, then another in 2012. And I said, you know what? I'm so glad to have, boys to raise in this world, because it doesn't matter when humans are born. It's every generation seems to think that things are going to be bad in the future. This has been consistent through history. In fact, every century it's going to be the apocalypse or the end of time. But I would say today there's a little more credence, a little more credibility associated with that, because we're living in a time where we can completely annihilate ourselves overnight. That's just a fact. There was never the ability to push a button and cause a chain reaction to destroy every human life on this planet, and perhaps most of the animals, and even insects if we choose. So here we are, and the fact that we haven't destroyed ourselves shows me that humans generally have compassion, understanding, and enough intellect to not kill ourselves completely, right? So let's just start on that premise. As dumb as a lot of people are, we're not that dumb. We have some basic common sense. So what does that mean for humans? Let's say, go back to the 1980s, I think it was, when between us and Russia, there were something like, 30,000 nuclear weapons? 40,000? 30 or 40,000 fucking nukes, okay? And this was during a really tense moment. I think it was during the Cuban Missile Crisis. A Russian nuclear monitor, who was the guy who launched the shit in retaliation if something happened, and I'm sure many of you have heard this story, but look it up if not, because it's a fascinating moment in history. he saw a bunch of U.S., nuclear missiles heading towards Russia. And he watched on the radar as they came closer and closer. He was ordered to shoot them down. He was at least supposed to shoot them down. And he chose not to. And he waited because in his mind, even during that intense moment of panic, he said, this just doesn't seem right. It just doesn't seem like something they'd do. And plus, they'd all be launched, right? He was wondering, why is it only a few? He waited. It turned out to be a flock of geese, I believe. And if he had launched in retaliation, look, you can't take that back. It would be over. We would be living in a completely devastated world. Because as I grew up, when we were young, my parents were young, they were taught to go into the desks, they had nuclear drills. We were just taught about MAD, my generation, MADD, mutually assured destruction. Sorry, MADD was Mothers Against Drunk Driving. That was another MAD in my generation. And both of them I agree with. Yeah, drunk driving's a problem, and so are nuclear missiles. And yes, I do say nuclear every time because it's actually a peeve of mine when people say nuclear. I can't help it. I've had people argue that that's just, since so many people say it, that's just how we say it now. I'm sorry, my friends. No. It is nuclear. So, moving on. I want to bring this full circle and make my point. To bring the Marxist point home, so people don't think I'm just some Marxist supporter, Karl Marx wasn't what people think at all. What he saw was the bourgeoisie, you got the proletariats, the workers, the blue-collar workers, the people out there who actually make the world run. As I made a video a few weeks ago, I believe I uploaded it, I'm not sure. It's called The Makers and the Takers, and it was about the fact that society has two types of people. You've got the landlords and you've got the renters. Okay, the renter is the person who has to pay rent every month, gets nothing in return except just a place to live temporarily. They're not making any money on their actual. When my wife and I met, we lived in an apartment for a while. We moved in together, a little apartment. Then we found a place. It was amazing. It was a small house, just like one bedroom and then an attic bedroom. But it was like a farmhouse surrounded by like 30 acres of just farmland that people were still using. Beautiful. They tilled up my garden for me with their tractor for the couple of years we lived there. It was wonderful, beautiful. And we get somewhere around early summer, my crop was about knee high. And then they came to my door and said, by the way, actually, I think they left a note. They're selling the land. And in the end, they sold it to a Lazy Boy Furniture. That's what they put there. Lazy Boy Recliner Store. I just thought, how funny. I'm out there busting my ass, making my garden and making my life. And now it's going to be just a fucking warehouse for commercialism. Anyway, doesn't matter. The point is, we had 30 days to vacate. We got all our shit together. We ended up not finding a place, so we had to move into a motel. Or I think we stayed with her sister first, and that just turned into a nightmare. So we rented a motel next to my friend's bar that he worked at. So here we are living in a motel with my wife and I and our son and our 5 rats living in the bathroom, chewing up the base. It was a weird time. Humans go through a lot of weird shit. But it was 2004. Her sister had a friend who was selling his house in Vancouver, Washington. It was $125,000. We went into the bank. We got a loan on a stated income, meaning you tell them this is how much you make. Back then, this was before the crash of 2008. Fate brought us to have a home. Our home has now appreciated. So I have a home that's worth 3 to 4 times more than when I bought it. So all the time we've put into equity, even though we took a home equity loan, we are still ahead of the game. Not a lot. We still owe a lot on the house. It's not the point. It's not like we have disposable income. We still both work jobs, but we've been able to live and make it. And even knowing that my wife and I both make okay money, we live in a state where minimum wage is high. I mean, living's expensive, but we don't buy things. Like, I am a very frugal guy. I don't buy new clothes. I don't buy shit I don't need. Fancy TVs. I'm still using stuff, phones that are used. Like, I'm very frugal. And that's because I want to be able to get the things I want in life, which is just a basic property. And we've worked so hard for this. My wife and I have been talking about it, looking for land for 2 years, saving our money as much as possible. And still, I think, what about the people out there who make just a little less than we do and never got a house in 2004? The ones that are still renting today. And I'm talking about people my age, Gen Xers. There's plenty of people in fucking Gen Z who can't afford a house too. And I have a lot of empathy for the younger generation that can't do these things. But this is set up not just by design, this whole rental society, but it is by design, but it's to benefit the few, fuck over the many. And the people who are in charge, your government, whoever's in charge, whoever's in office right now in the United States of America running the government. You might be watching this in 4 or 5 years. I don't know who. It doesn't matter. They probably don't give a shit about you. And it's funny because I'm a liberal, generally. I guess you would consider me a classic liberal, I suppose, if you want to define it. But I'm not. People are, maybe surprised by some of my conservative, values about things, and kind of I see that life isn't the reality we want it to be. That it's not, you can't just have a communist country where the government cares and does everything properly and takes care of the citizens. You also can't just allow a country to turn fully capitalist and have loopholes and corporations that basically run the government, which is what we have right now. An oligarchy or a kleptocracy, if you will, corporatocracy. I'm really sick of the definitions. It doesn't matter. What we have is pure theft from people like you and me. People who, our parents, our mothers and fathers, worked their asses off, maybe, a lot of them, to provide for us, and maybe even contributed something, maybe scientific discoveries, or helped to build a stadium, or building the damn roads or houses, whatever it might be. Their parents, same thing. And meanwhile, many of them, their kids that they've raised and spent all this time raising and all this money and effort and time to try to raise a good human, then the military comes in and decides, well, by the way, they're going off to war because it's the patriotic thing to do. Then they send them off to Korean War, or to Vietnam, or to Desert Storm, or to Iraq, or Afghanistan. And all of these wars were complete, fabricated fucking bullshit that were all designed to benefit a few. Look, we know we've been lied to. If you look back at what we were told, what our parents were told about why we went into Vietnam, and by the way, I have a personal kind of grievance with this because my father went to Vietnam and he had only told one story about having to go into a village and being ordered to mow down all the women and children. And, I never was quite sure about that story, like how common something like that was, till I realized that was pretty standard procedure. Because the idea to them was get rid of the women and children, then you demoralize the enemy. The same way you don't have a bunch of kid soldiers like me. Look at me. I'm a human being. I could never, ever kill a child. I just could not do it. I mean, I say that as the human I am now. That doesn't mean that when I was 18, I couldn't have been brainwashed into doing something like that. But there is no way that my morals would allow me to harm an innocent. But when you're in war, everybody thinks that. Next thing you know, you're just, living the rest of your life with this grievance, which my dad did, and it killed him. But he's not the only one, right? So, not to get off track, but if the government, if the military wants to tell us that these wars were important and that we should care about our veterans and that we should, really celebrate the great victories we've had, because, mind you, we have done some good things. We have protected people. Many of the wars have been caused by us. Many of the issues have been caused by us. But the fact is, there are some good units out there, and we have a very strong military. But anytime you're in war, values go out the door pretty quickly. It's the fog of war, as they call it. And so what I'm saying is, a lot of these people a lot of our family members were sacrificed to supposedly make this better nation that's supposed to be safer, more prosperous, stronger. We know that we took resources. We know we took strategic places and advantages for the country. But here's what it comes down to. They say it's for national security or national benefit, for the benefit of the nation. And what we have to realize is, anytime they say that, what they mean is a benefit for the corporatocracy, a benefit for the companies. You think about United Fruit, I think it was, which went into Ecuador, and Ecuador wanted to make their bananas, basically take their banana crops, which were becoming more popular, and nationalize the money so everybody could benefit. No. U.S. Fruit Company came in. They literally came back to the U.S., rented a bunch of mercenaries, a military, and they actually got backing from the U.S. government to go back in and create a coup and take the country by force so they could own the banana plantations. It's just one example of many. We've done this with oil. We've done this with coal. We've done this with diamond mines. We've done this with anything you can imagine, any fucking resource out there, even down to the resource of just a good watch out, a good post. Like Israel, for example. There's no real benefit to that land except being a stronghold in the Middle East, which my country wholeheartedly supports. Every administration supports Israel 100%. And I'm disgusted by it. I know that what's happening over there is a full-blown genocide, ethnic cleansing. And the U.S. media has tried to sanitize this by making it sound like, well, no, it's not that way. They've had plenty of chances to make a deal. Hamas doesn't want to make a deal. It's all bullshit. I pay close attention as much as I can to not just what's happening now, which we can never get the full story, but historically, what information has come out. And you find a long history of Israel ignoring agreements. And you look into the U.S., and you find out that the U.S. and Israel, for example, are the only two countries that don't sign off on, considering something tyrannical or a fucking genocide. Whereas you have over 100 countries signing an agreement that they believe something looks to them like genocide, or that a country has broken the law. And you'll only have one or two countries, maybe three, somebody else who wants to look good with the U.S., but the U.S. and Israel have fought against or, voted against so many different types of punishment for those who have committed horrendous crimes. My country is guilty of horrible tyrannical acts. And I would say in the name of freedom or justice, but that's never the case. It's always to serve those powerful masters with their pocketbooks. And I want to make this clear. These people really believe that they're entitled to this power. This is something I think a lot of folks don't realize. It's not just that people are looking to make money. It's not just that people want to rule over others. These are all parts of it, but we're talking about people who believe that they are born with an entitlement to have power over other human beings. And as a a tall white male in the United States of America, people would say, well, you've got it pretty easy, right? I mean, you're like blue hair or blue-eyed, blonde-haired, tall white guy in the U.S. It's just kind of that cliche, stereotype. Um, it's not easy for anybody here. That's the thing I'm getting at. We should all be doing better. And if we're suffering in this country, which is considered to be the freest, richest country, major country, in the world, can you imagine how others are faring? Not just in your country, but elsewhere. The people who work 12-hour days just so they can pay their basic bills and scrape by. How do we become the richest country in the world and build so many amazing things and then not have any benefit from it as a society? It's because your leaders think you're stupid. They don't believe in real democracy, and they don't care about your vote. All they care about is what they can make and how much power they can obtain. And if that sounds cynical, then I'm sorry, but it's just true. These are facts. There have not been any presidents that I can remember in my lifetime who have actually kept their word and given a real shit about the people. They may play games that look good, but I know that game. And I think you do too. So with that said, I guess I'm going to go home now. It's getting late. I sat out the rainstorm and the traffic. Thanks for coming. Thanks for listening. This is available on YouTube on my Cartbo719 channel for the video, and the audio is on my podcast, 15-Minute Free Thinking. If you'd like to contribute and become a patron, there's some extra content on there that I upload from time to time. And I wish you all the best of days. I'll probably get more into this topic soon. I have to get home now to eat, but I really wanted to get deep into this topic when I write some notes down. Just the travesty of the people in power. It's worse than people even realize, but there's nothing we can do about it. So what do we do about it? And that will be the key. And I'm going to discuss that some other time. I'll see y'all. Peace and love.